A special Thanksgiving episode today on Free Range Q&A with Kresta. Welcome to this episode of Free Range Q&A with Kresta, where we are not going to take your questions and comments from Facebook, Twitter, and email. I have a few of my own questions during this special episode for Al to center around conversations that we might be having at the dinner table with family and friends this Thanksgiving. So let's start off with a few of your thoughts. Yeah,
it's really
probably
not.
Shouldn't witness this.
Not right. It's just not right.
What can we do to ensure that during this season that we'll have conversations that go beyond the surface?
Yeah, it's important because these are great times. I love Thanksgiving. I love when we have time with family and friends that come over and just we hang around.
Yeah.
I've been blessed because all my adult life I've had a great circle of friends that like to talk about the faith and how to integrate the faith with our lives. We talk about our kids. But a lot of people don't, and I know that because I grew up in a home that had very few decent conversations. Our conversations, at best, if we had conversations at all, focused on celebrity gossip, political opinions without much evidence, and of course the ever-present sports talk, which at least had the advantage of using box scores and game scores and real records, but still, it takes a lot of time. Here, I just want to let people know, families and friends do get together and have conversations of consequence about near-death experiences, about creation and evolution. Aunt Bessie comes in and says she's read St. Paul, how she's not supposed to exasperate her children. I mean, this conversation really goes on. People do pray together. So I want to encourage us to have this expectation. You can't force it, but you can be prepared to take advantage of those moments when they open up. And it is, of course, Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And Catholics in particular, above all Christian people, should be a people of thanksgiving because Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith. That is the great Thanksgiving. I know when I was a kid, I remember 6 years old, wearing my sneakers on a sunny summer day. I'm outside in the backyard. There's a pool there, and there's a big, massive tree shading my house and my grandmother's house next door. And I can remember just having pangs of gratitude and thanksgiving. I don't know what it was, just the very fact of being alive. I was astonished to be. And I remember, because I was raised Catholic, I had somebody I could thank for that. And I think Thanksgiving is about being able to return something we've received. It's closing the circuit. We receive, in our case, from God, our very life, and we reciprocate by giving thanks. We receive, we give thanks. And so this Thanksgiving, it's good to play off that understanding and maybe get to the place where we can talk about how we train ourselves to give thanks through the sacrifice of the Mass, the ritual of the Eucharist. And as St. Ambrose said, the duty to give thanksgiving is our supreme duty.
So St. Ambrose said that Thanksgiving is a duty.
Yeah.
So how does that square with your idea of spontaneous Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it's a good point. Because, of course, when you're young and you're well-fed and living in a wealthy area of the world, it might come naturally. And a lot of people say, well, look, if you were crippled, you were hungry, you were in a nation of war, it wouldn't be so easy to give Thanksgiving. Right. Well, maybe not. But I like to tell the story of a German Lutheran pastor during the 30 Years' War, Martin Rinkert. And in 1637, he was in the closed city of Eilenburg. He was the only pastor left there. It was filling up with all kinds of political refugees and soldiers, disease, pestilence. One year he buried 5,000 of his parishioners. On one day he did 50 funerals, including his wife. This was a place where misery ruled the day. But he was raising his boys in that environment. And one day he was reading Sirach, chapter 20, verses 22 and 24, and he began to write a grace, a daily grace that he wanted his boys to learn. And it's one we all know today. Now thank we all our God with heart and hands and voices, who wondrous things have done, in whom his world rejoices, who from our mother's arms hath led us on our way with countless gifts of love, and still is ours today. 1637, in the midst of tremendous suffering. So St. Ambrose tells us we have a duty to give thanksgiving because it may not come spontaneously. We have to be trained to do it. And part of our obligation, mass obligation, is to learn how to wire ourselves to give thanksgiving when it doesn't come spontaneously.
Okay, let's get to some of the topics that I'm sure will come up at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Syrian refugees. Obviously. Should the U.S. take in refugees from Syria now that we see what has happened in Paris and Beirut? What about those who don't have a passport? These are some of the issues with the Syrian refugees that are going to be talked about.
Yeah, try to keep it short. One, you can always count on moral outrage and indignation, no matter what side people are on. You'll be accused, if you think the nation should not be taking in refugees, you'll be accused of being hard-hearted and lacking compassion. If you think the nation should take in refugees, you'll be accused of being a bleeding heart liberal. And so set aside the moral indignation and try to make a distinction between the responsibility of the state and the responsibility of the church. The state's first duty is to protect the lives of its citizens. That's why it's instituted by God. The church, on the other hand, is instituted in order to share Christ's vision of the kingdom, and that means welcoming the poor, the oppressed, and the indigent. When people say, well, Jesus tells us that we should recognize him in the least of these our brothers, that's absolutely true for Christians, but the state doesn't have that responsibility, first of all. And if this were, at last I checked, America's not a theocracy. It's not a Christian theocracy.
Well, some would make you believe that.
Yes, not me. But the church has responsibility. So I would put it this way. Until we're willing to ask if our parishes are taking in refugees, we have no business claiming that Washington should do it. Why do we think that the secular state, why do we think Caesar should do things of compassion that even our churches aren't willing to do? I would lobby that the church do its responsibility for taking these refugees. And I'd leave it there.
I know that the Pope will be a matter of conversation. People are excited about Pope Francis. Beginning on the 8th, the Pope is declaring a year of mercy.
Yeah.
What do you think people are going to emphasize when it comes to mercy? Are they happy to receive mercy? Do they think that mercy means there are no standards?
I think this is a great opportunity to bring up something that most people haven't thought about. Everybody loves Pope Francis, and they keep saying he's the Pope of mercy. But mercy presupposes that there's some standard or rule or law that hasn't been reached. And because it hasn't been reached or because it's been violated, we need mercy.
Yeah.
So I would ask the question, I love Pope Francis too, and I love this emphasis on mercy, but I'm curious, all those people who are enthusiastic about Pope Francis's emphasis on mercy, what is it that they've done that makes them think they need mercy?
Yeah.
Because you have to get to the question of how we've fallen short. All have fallen short of the glory of God. We do need mercy, but most people confuse mercy and love. Mercy is a species of love. Love is what we get unconditionally. Mercy is what we get when we've fallen short of the law of God. Most people don't want to talk about the will of God.
I think everyone realizes that there is an election coming up in 2016. So, what do you think? I mean, this is obviously another topic that most likely will come up.
It will come up without question. I think make this an opportunity to point out the bankruptcy of modern media. I would say, I'm really interested in this election, but you know what? I don't really know what the policies are that these candidates are talking about, and that's because most reporting on politics today is concerned about it's the horse race. Who's ahead? Yep. Who's behind? Who's been insulted? Who's done something clever? Who's run the best spot? If it's a woman that's running, then will her husband be able to be first man?
Yeah.
It's nonsense. I mean, ask yourself this. Do you know what Ben Carson's tax policy is and how it compares to Donald Trump's?
Definitely.
My guess is that 90% of those of us who are listening here, including me, can't really give you a quick explanation for that.
Right.
Why? When we've got 24/7 news coverage, it's because political reporting is entertainment reporting. Yes. It's not policy reporting.
Got 24 hours to fill.
Yeah.
Got to fill it with something.
Yeah. So, a point worth making, and you won't look like a fool if you make the statement that the press isn't doing the job it should.
Yeah. Politicians do not like lightning rounds, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to give you a lightning round.
I'm no politician.
Okay. Parting questions. Oven or deep fry the turkey?
Oven. Yeah.
White meat or dark meat?
Dark.
Stuffing in the turkey or out?
I like it in, but I'll take it either way.
Gravy over everything or just the turkey?
Depends on the weather. Yeah.
Green beans or corn?
As long as they're kept separate. You mix them together and you don't sit at my table.
Instant or real potatoes?
I'm surprised you'd ask. Real potatoes.
Yeah, you have to ask. 99% would agree with you.
I want to be invited back to Idaho. So,
pumpkin pie with or without whipped cream?
I'd like to say without, but yes, as much as I can put on there, I will. Yeah.
Black Friday shopping, no shopping?
No Black Friday shopping. Stay home.
Michigan or Ohio State?
You've got to be kidding. We're in Ann Arbor.
And
I graduated from East Lansing. No Ohio State. I have a daughter-in-law who's an Ohio State fan, and I love her, but we don't talk about it.
The aforementioned Notre Dame or Stanford?
Notre Dame, without question. I always stay with Catholic school.
Absolutely. Al, happy Thanksgiving.
And to you, Nick, and you should not be embarrassing Bob like this. You're putting him through the paces.
Bob will be embarrassed. And happy Thanksgiving to you.
Have a great time.
Wishing best to you and yours, and we'll see you next time on Free Range Q&A with Al Kresta.
First of all, keep in mind, the Church prays for the salvation of all people, including Muslims. Islam, however, rejects the central Christian...